Hey everybody, this video brings us out to Boyertown, Pennsylvania on this very, very cold day. As you can see, I got the heavy jacket on. I've got the heavy jacket on today. In fact, how cold is it? It's so cold, it's literally sleeting on me right now. Freezing rain is falling upon me. It is that cold out. But the reason why we're out here dealing with the horrible, awful weather today is to check out the Fairview Cemetery, again, here in Boyertown, Pennsylvania, to take a look at something pretty interesting that resides in this cemetery, and also to talk about a tragedy that happened right down the road. However, before we take a look at the interesting thing that actually resides in this cemetery, and before we talk about that tragedy, just take a look at the cemetery in of itself. This has got to be one of the most impressive cemeteries in the area. The way it sits on that hill, that is awesome. We will definitely be back out here to take a look at this cemetery again, probably on a much warmer day, maybe this spring, maybe this summer, when it's not actually sleeting, when I don't need a heavy jacket, and when I'm not freezing and getting frostbite on my hand. But again, the reason why we're actually out here today is to take a look at something pretty interesting that resides in this cemetery, and to talk about a tragedy that happened about a 5-minute walk right down the road. There's actually a historical marker here talking about the tragedy, and that is the Rhoads Opera House fire. The actual marker says, a disastrous fire destroyed the theater that stood at Philadelphia Avenue and Washington Street on January 13th, 1908. It claimed 170 victims, many buried here due to overcrowding, poorly designed and unmarked exits, and inadequate fire escapes. The tragedy prompted the PA General Assembly to enact fire safety laws and improve construction and inspection standards, making public buildings safer and influencing similar legislation in other states. So right here at the actual cemetery, not at the actual area where the Opera House stood, there's a historical marker. Very loud trucks. There's a historical marker marking the event. The actual Opera House did burn down. That is no longer there. However, about 2 years later, so 1910, they actually built a new structure there that looks very similar to the original Opera House. In fact, when I was looking up photos of the original Opera House, I said to myself, wait a minute, that building's still standing. I thought it burnt down, and then it turns out they actually just built another building that looks very, very similar to the original Opera House. There is actually a plaque on the new building, the 1910 building, that does also commemorate the tragedy that did happen there and the lives that were sadly lost, again, due to poor design, poor safety issues at the actual Opera House. Apparently, though, the Opera House, I should say Opera House, because apparently it was not really an opera house like you would think of an opera house. When I say opera house, you probably think of this big, grand stage with seating and big chandeliers and all that stuff that normally comes with an opera house. This apparently was a 3-story building that just happened to have a stage on the second floor, from what I was reading. So not really an opera house. In fact, I was also reading that an opera probably never even was put on at the Opera House. It was just, again, a 3-story building with a stage on the second floor. And they did put on plays and shows there. And apparently on January 13th, 1908, a local church was putting on a show there, and a fire broke out, and 170 lives were tragically lost due to inadequate safety design on the actual building, probably most likely due to the doors. I have read so many different stories on disasters very similar to this that happened back in the early 1900s, and 9 times out of 10, it was all because of the doors that opened inwards and not outwards. You never want doors that open inwards, because if a fire breaks out, everybody freaks out. And what do? They run towards the doors, and then you have 1,000 people crammed up against these doors, trying to all get themselves out, freaking out, trying to get out of this building. And the doors need to open inwards, and nobody can open the doors inwards because everybody is pushing against the doors. So doors that open inwards, not good. And because of this fire, new safety laws were actually put in place, and doors now open outwards in a lot of places. So I'm going to walk up here and take a look at something pretty interesting that resides in this really awesome looking cemetery that has to do with the actual tragedy. I'll try not to be too winded in this video, because we are going to walk up this hill right now, and you guys know how I am with slight inclines. I am extremely out of shape, and I tend to get very winded walking up slight inclines. But like I said, up this hill here sits something pretty interesting I want to show you guys. So all throughout this entire cemetery, there's actually graves from those who did die in the fire. However, not everybody who passed away in the fire was able to be identified. There were a lot of people who were so badly burnt due to the fire, they were actually unidentifiable. And those people are buried here as well. And that's what we're going to take a look at. So if you want to find this grave that we're going to take a look at, find the castle that sits up there on the top of the hill. I was actually talking to somebody when I first got here. Right when I pulled in, there was somebody here, and I was talking to them a little bit, and I was asking them, is that where they do services? I kind of assumed that when somebody passes away, that is where they do church services, where they hold viewings, things like that. He said no. He was telling me apparently that's a mausoleum. Now, I don't know if that's actually true or not. I'm not entirely sure if it is a mausoleum or if it is where they hold services. But if that's a mausoleum for just one person, for one family, that is quite impressive. Again, it's a castle that sits up on top of the actual hill there. That is really, really neat. All right, a little winded. It's actually really hard to breathe out here right now because it's so incredibly cold. I'm just breathing in cold air into my lungs this entire time. And as such, I gotta take these nice deep breaths. It is extremely cold out today. But right here actually sits the grave of those who were unidentifiable in the fire. The actual grave does say, to the memory of the unidentified in the Boyertown catastrophe, January 13, 1908. So everybody who sadly who was there, but whose bodies were so badly damaged, so badly burnt from the fire that they were unidentifiable, were buried right here in a mass grave. Pretty crazy. Some of these people are actually very young, age 8, 19, 13, 15, 14, 18. So not everybody who passed away in this fire was an adult. There were some children who also sadly passed away in this tragedy. Crazy, awful story. Definitely a horrible memory in this town's history. But I wanted to show you guys this grave here of those who were buried because they were unidentifiable. Look at this. The unidentified, it says right on the back there. So like I said, all throughout this entire cemetery, there are many victims. Out of those 170 victims, many of them are buried right here. But this is the grave I really wanted to show you guys. Those were so badly burnt, they were unidentifiable. Pretty crazy. So again, if you want to actually find this grave, right there is the castle. I'm going to call it the castle that sits on the top of the hill. Pull in, find that, and then right down from the castle sits the grave of the unidentified from the 1908 Rhoads Opera House fire. Again, crazy, awful, tragic story. However, it is nice to know that they did not die in vain. Because of their death, the PA General Assembly created new legislation so that things like this would not happen again. So tragedies like this would not happen again. So 170 people would not die in another fire ever again. So very sad, tragic story, but at least they did not die in vain. Their death prompted legislation to help others in the future. All right, guys, wanted to bring you out here. Wanted to show you this. I'm going to head home now because it is still sleeting. I don't know how bad it's going to get. They were calling for the possibility of snow at some point, so I'm sure it's going to get, the ground is a little slippery right now. So the roads are probably going to get pretty bad. Again, it is freezing. It is freezing temperature. The roads might actually start to freeze, and I'm going to get home before any of that actually happens. But still, wanted to bring you guys out here and show you the mass grave of the unidentified from the Rhoads Opera House tragedy, the Opera House fire, back on January 13th, 1908, here, right down the road in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. Crazy, awful, tragic story. But all right, guys, I'm gonna let you go. So as always, thank you all so much for checking out this video. Be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Definitely check down below for links to Patreon. If you guys do become a patron, I will send you a postcard every single month from the road. Also check down below for a link to Spreadshirt, where you can grab yourself retro Rest Stop t-shirts, proceeds, both from Spreadshirt and from Patreon. Do go to keep this show going, supporting this show, bringing us out to interesting places like this so we can see interesting graves and talk about horrible tragedies and history. So I really do appreciate the help, guys. All right, so like I said, check down below for all the different links. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And if you do hit that subscribe button or you are subscribed, then I will see you in tomorrow's video. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Bye.